welcome to the podcast Distinct People, Distinct Time, where we have a conversation about congregational life in the 21st century. I'm today's host, Jeff Long, and with me is Nate Akin, Associate Director of the Pillar Network. So Nate, our listeners may not know who you are, so tell us a little bit about who Nate Akin is.
Yeah, glad to be with you guys. So born in Dallas, Texas, one of four sons. My dad is actually the president at Southeastern Seminary here in Wake Forest, North Carolina. So we grew up around the ministry, and I would say our family is basically about two things. We're about theology and sports, and so we're not much more complicated than that. We really can't. We can't fix anything. We can't. We're not good at almost anything else, but we can talk theology and we can talk sports. So that's me. Went to Murray State University, studied political science actually, but played college basketball there. Played in 2 NCAA tournaments. And then eventually pursued ministry, moved to North Carolina to go to seminary in 2007, got connected to a really good church, Open Door Baptist Church here in Raleigh, went through their pastoral internship, really grew a strong love for the local church and thought, I want to give myself to pastoring, to teaching God's word, to shepherding God's people. Left Open Door to plant a church in Raleigh. 2 of the 3 elders came out of Open Door. It's called Imago Dei Church, not far from where we're at right now. Pastored there for about 6 years, and then stepped away now about 2.5 years ago to start working at Pillar. And so I've been with Pillar about 2.5 years now. Yeah.
But before we talk about Pillar, so you're a college basketball player. Yeah. I understand you're very good. So who's the best Akin basketball player?
I am the best at my best, but right now I'm a little out of shape, so I would probably say Paul or Tim, our youngest two, would probably be the best right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that period of time when you were at Southeastern, you were still balling, and you come across one of our guys,
Scott Hand.
Scott Hand.
Yeah. So the very first year I got there, we played 1 year together on the same intramural team, and we were dominant. I was still really good shape. Scott thinks he's really good, and Scott's decent. He's a decent ball player. Scott is a great shooter. So all Scott would do is stand in the corner, and I would drive, I would pass him the ball, and he would hit 7 or 8 threes a game. So he would probably disagree with some of the things I just said, but Scott is, we were a really, really good team, and Scott and I played really well together, so enjoyed always playing basketball with him.
Yeah, Scott's a legend in his own mind.
He is, yeah. I already heard him yesterday asking, hey, are we going to hoop anytime while I'm here? And I'm thinking, man, it's a 2-day conference. It's packed in. Where are we going to find time to hoop? I don't know.
Well, he took all the interns last night and had a little competition on a par 3 golf course. He's got to compete.
Scott, man, that guy's awesome. Yeah.
Always having a great time.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us, what is the Pillar Network?
Yeah, so the Pillar Network is, and I'll just give you the mission statement. We are a community of Great Commission Baptist and International Baptist churches that are doctrinally aligned. So we have a common doctrine, that we're missionally driven. So we don't want to just talk about doctrine. We actually want to do something together. And that being missionally driven is for the purpose of equipping, planting, and revitalizing churches. So we want to help churches be strengthened. We want to plant new churches, and then we want to revitalize churches that are moving towards death or decline. And so that's really why Pillar exists.
Right. So Parkwood has a tremendous heart for these things, what you just shared. We were drawn to Pillar. In fact, you had a huge and massive influence on me and your contact with me in that, because I knew about it, but I didn't know enough until we started talking. But the distinctives really is what put me over the edge, and those things are real. I mean, when we're here this week, we're sharing. We're at a conference, the Unite conference. So what are those distinctives?
Yeah. So when we're talking about doctrinal alignment, we're really talking about doctrinal alignment around what we just call 6 DNA. DNA starts with exactly what we're talking about this week in our conference, gospel proclamation. We want to be a network that heralds the gospel. Part of that means we want to be churches that are concerned with sound doctrine. One of the things we think the world needs is, the world doesn't need a bunch more tips. The world needs sound doctrine. We need to saturate the world with sound doctrine. That's what Paul is constantly telling Timothy and Titus. You want to make things right, teach sound doctrine. So gospel proclamation, we are a Bible-based, we are committed to the scriptures. I love being Baptist. We're people of the book. The Pillar Network is no different. We want to be people of the book, committed to the Bible. Third one is that we're committed, and makes us distinct. Kind of those first two, most SBC churches would be before, but this kind of start to make us a little distinct. We're committed to live expository preaching, so not doing kind of the video venue multi-site way. We're committed, again, to in-person live exposition. We want to be committed to expository preaching. Not every church in the SBC is committed to expository expository preaching, and certainly not everyone is committed to live expository preaching. From there, we would be a network that's committed to the plurality of elders. We would see as the most faithful representation of the New Testament that a healthy church would have a plurality of men who are qualified to be pastors, overseers, who are shepherding and leading the congregation. Fifth one would be we're committed to being confessionally Baptistic. We are a Baptist network. So the things that come along with that, regenerate church membership and congregationalism and believers' baptism by immersion and all the things that kind of come along with this is being Baptist. That's who we are. And then the final one is kingdom-mindedness, meaning we're trying to accomplish something together. We want to accomplish these three things together. It's really fun to get together and talk theology. It's really fun to fellowship, but we want our fellowship and our talking about theology to drive us to actually do something together, and that is the planting and strengthening of churches.
Right. So let me talk about one of those distinctives. We went through a dilemma. There was a lot of pressure. 2012 or so, the video venue thing was on.
Yeah.
We had a heart for planting, and there was some internal, even in staff, we need to go to that. We did a lot of research, and we came to the conviction that did not need to happen. Now, I have some reasons why for me, but what are some of the reasons Pillar chose to put that in the forefront and say live expositional preaching?
Yeah, I think there's several factors behind it, and I wasn't in on those early conversations. I just know Dwayne well enough to know several factors. So one, Dwayne's the chairman and one of the kind of guys who helped start it. He's a preaching prophet, and so one of the things he is very big about is, and I want to be careful using this term, but I hope you understand what I mean. He's big on incarnational preaching, that the person who's going to be leading the congregation is actually among his people. They can see him. And so I think that was a massive part of that. I think also that most of the guys who were kind of forming the thinking of Pillar in the early days did not really love a kind of how they saw multi-site playing out. They would actually say, I think it's inconsistent with the scriptures. And so they, again, as Baptist, since some of these guys would argue that the multi-site model, particularly of kind of the one guy preaching is not Baptist. It's more Episcopal and other things. And so we are Baptist. And again, I understand some of the reasons and that brothers do that. And there's some gifted preachers who do these things. But at the end of the day, I think it actually starts to limit leadership development. And I think it can and even harm the church, particularly if that personality leaves or, God forbid, something bad happens to them. That doesn't always have to be the case, and almost any church struggles when the lead pastor leaves. That's just how it is. Right. But there are ways to mitigate how disastrous that's going to be, I think, and that's better done through autonomous local churches who are raising up leaders and then planting autonomous churches.
Right.
Yeah.
You had a Spurgeon shirt on yesterday. Yeah. Spurgeon was alive today. I'm sure they would try to put him all over the place in video, and I think he would reject it.
I think he would too.
Because he was committed to training the next generation of preachers, and he was committed to incarnational preaching, the live preaching of the Word.
And I don't want to say, some of these guys who do multi-site have great influence, but the guys who I think are going to have long-term impact, some of whom we know, like guys like a Mark Dever, who are doing an internship every semester, and they're sending guys out all over all the world. They don't bear the name Capitol Hill when they go out. He's going to have a massive influence on the next generation. But guys like Dwayne Milione, who's been a father in the ministry to me, he's sent out most people don't know in the SBC who Dwayne Milione is, but Dwayne has sent out tons of guys to plant and pastor churches. And so you can have just as big an impact. You won't have as big a name and platform, but you can have just as big an impact just raising up faithful guys who will go out and pastor autonomous churches.
Amen. And they're chomping at the bits. Young men they want to preach. They're ready to preach. And one of the frustrations is that they're not getting the opportunity to do so, which leads to the next question. What kind of churches make up Pillar?
Yeah, so I would say, again, the churches kind of going along with our DNA would be churches that are Baptistic, so they're concerned about things like meaningful membership. They love expositional preaching, so they love the Bible, and they want to do church planting. Now, I think what you're asking me is kind of the feel or makeup of the church of the network. I would say the breakdown of the network is about half the churches in the network were church plants themselves. So they were planted out of churches along the way. Some of those churches now are 10 or 12 years old, but they were church plants themselves. Another probably quarter of our churches, I would say, are revitalizations. They are, they may be a church that says, we're 100 years old, we haven't planted a church since 1945. We want to plant churches, help us do that. And then another quarter would be churches like Parkwood, churches like Open Door, Cornerstone in South Carolina, and more. I could mention more, but a quarter would be they are a kind of established, existing church that's healthy, that is multiplying themselves. And that's where we want to go. So we want all our plants and all of our revitalizations to eventually be what we would call kind of Antioch-type churches. They raise up leadership. They send out leadership. They either send that leadership out to plant new works or to strengthen existing works. But that's kind of the makeup of who Pillar is.
Yeah. So back when the pandemic hit, we were having all the Zoom calls, and as I'm listening, it's becoming very obvious to me that a lot of these, like you said, basically 75% are plants or revitalization situations, and these guys they were struggling, and we were all struggling, but it was a very acute struggle that I could see in them. And in the midst of that, there have been times as we've entered Pillar, I'm thinking, what does Parkwood bring to the table? Why a church like Parkwood be a part? What does our church help with?
So maybe I could just answer it like in three ways. Number one, and probably most importantly, would be modeling. So y'all have one of the reasons I was really drawn to you guys was I had heard of how y'all had planted churches, how you were raising up leadership, and so I was saying, kind of what we aspire for all of our churches to be, y'all are that. So in some ways, you're modeling, which also then leads, I think, to the second thing, which is coaching. You can help coach guys who are saying, you know what, we desire to be like Parkwood. It's going to take us some time. How did y'all do this? How did you get there? What are some lessons learned? And then obviously a church like Parkwood, who has this track record of being an Antioch-type church, you will also have resources. And by that, I don't just mean money. Like you certainly will have money to help with our plants and things that will go out. But you guys have human resources. Y'all have a. We were having this conversation yesterday with our regional coaches. Like the big piece that needs to happen for Pillar to even kind of like hit the next stage or kind of get to the next level of in worldly terms success is going to be for us to have a bunch of churches who have a pipeline of leaders like Parkwood, like Open Door, like Cornerstone, other churches in our network. And so that's a huge piece for us, how to, tapping into network, to a church that has a kind of a pipeline like that. And so those are a few reasons why I think y'all are a great fit. You are the ideal, and anytime you can get the ideal church in your network to get to know and rub shoulders with others, I think it's going to be a big benefit to our network.
So tell you something you may not even know. Yep. So Wake Minister, where you went to help, right?
That's right.
Now they've called a pastor.
Yep.
Do you know they've called an associate?
I just met him yesterday.
Well, he came through the pipeline at Parkwood, student at Southeastern, and Andrew Burgess is now an associate pastor. He is so excited. Yeah,
that's awesome. So I was in the early stages when they were looking for a pastor. I went out there so that they somehow found out about Pillar. I went out there, started preaching a little bit, meeting with their leadership. Even to some degree, they asked me to consider being the pastor. I met with the search committee for a while. So we worked through it. We presented Josh to them. Josh is now serving there. So to me, that when I met Andrew yesterday, I was so excited that we found a pastor to help Josh. I mean, Josh, being a pastor by yourself, that's why we believe in plurality, right? There's so much benefit to that. And for him to find that through the Pillar family, to me, this is why we exist. This is one of the reasons we exist, is in order to share resources like this. And that's what I mean. Y'all were able to share a resource, not necessarily even money to Wake Minister, but a family who's going to come and serve. And
And that comes back to what you said earlier about you have no idea. So we didn't orchestrate that.
Nope.
You didn't connect him to Parkwood. We didn't connect to him. But just how those things that you're doing, they come together for the sake of the kingdom.
Yep.
And praise God for that.
I love it. Yeah, I had no idea until I met Andrew yesterday, because Josh came in and introduced him to me, and I was so thankful. And sometimes we do get the staff gets a chance to coordinate, and we jokingly say play matchmaker and things like that. But sometimes we're just wanting church-to-church partnership to happen that we don't even need to know about it. Right. And then we can celebrate it once we know about it. So, yeah, love that.
So what would be a story or instance? Where are you encouraged? What's something that's encouraging happening right now in Pillar?
Yeah, we're going to actually promote this today, and we'll have a panel conversation on this, because I think this is one of the things that we're kind of running towards, and we're even seeing. It's funny enough, because if you had told me this 10 years ago, I said, that's crazy. Young guys are not going to care about this at all. But one of the things I think Pillar is helping Baptists do is to actually find again and repurpose what I would call healthy associating. And so what we think healthy association should look like. So we have a region up in Northern Virginia, so they're mainly east of Washington, D.C. And what they've done, so there's 6 churches in the network in that region. And Hamilton Baptist Church, which funny enough was planted by the Philadelphia Association, like the mid 1700s. So it's a really old church, but they haven't planted since like 1930 or something. So they brought in a guy named Cody. They have been training him up, equipping him with the desire, hopefully, to plant him. But what they decided to do was do it cooperatively. So what they've done is like every 3 months, he's taken 6 weeks and spent 6 weeks preaching at and serving at all the other churches in the region, so that he can recruit people from that and resources from all those churches. So they are, in one sense, Hamilton is the sending church, but all 6 of the churches in the region will have ownership of what they're doing. They found this town, Lovettsville, which is Lovettsville, Virginia, has never, as far as we know, never had a Baptist church. It's an old kind of German colony, never had a Baptist church. And so for the first time ever, they're going to plant Lovettsville Baptist Church, and people from all 6 of those churches, finances from all 6 of those churches are going to go to kind of support that work. And so to me, that's exciting. We're seeing a little bit of that in the Charlotte region with kind of what Trail's doing with Pioneer, but I want that kind of story to grow and grow and grow and do that all the more.
Man, that is awesome. Yeah. That's encouraging. My wheels are spinning.
Yeah, it's great.
About how to help our church plants that have come out of us and local. Man, that's
and even
good.
Just exciting to me because like Hamilton's a decent sized church, not as large as Parkwood, but a decent sized church. But it's been really cool to see because some of those other churches are 100 or even like 60 people, and now they get a chance to have ownership in the church plant as well. And so smaller churches can be involved in this, and I think that's an exciting thing for us to hopefully try to model.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what the future pillar. I think that's one of the things there.
I hope the future of Pillar is certainly that. I think there's still churches who would affirm our DNA that we just don't know yet. We're going to get to know them and recruit them. But I'm hopeful that we do catch this kind of vision for cooperative planting so that we're getting all of our 130 churches involved. Because I think if we do that, I think planting over time will snowball and we'll see a lot more healthy churches. So, yeah.
Well, grateful for what you're doing there, but I'm also grateful for another thing you're a part of, Baptist 21. Yeah. So what is Baptist 21? Yeah,
so we started Baptist 21 now, funny enough, probably 2009. So we've had 11 events at the SBC. We started Baptist 21 mainly a group of seminary guys. We were young at the time, and we were kind of looking at the SBC and seeing a lot of our peers leave. And some of the things they were upset with and the reasons that they left, we resonated with. We thought, hey, this is not a perfect convention. There are things we have real issues with. But we've also received a lot from the Southern Baptist Convention. We've been benefited a lot. And all of us received the gospel in a Southern Baptist church. We faithfully preached. So we said, hey, how about instead of being kind of taking our ball and going home, how about we try to be a winsome voice on the inside that celebrates what's good and then hopefully seeks to change things that we don't agree with, better than just starting something new. And so we decided to be a kind of a group that came together and did that. Didn't think it would resonate at all. Thought, hey, my mom will read the blog and that'll be about it, and nobody else will check it out. And then we found out within 2 months we had exploded. Like, you found so many people were resonating with that conversation. The main point, Baptist 21, means we just want to talk about what it means to be Baptist in the 21st century. But really what we're trying to do is talk about how can we still be a faithful Southern Baptist Convention moving forward. And so we've really centered that around 3 things. We want to be gospel-centered, and that really, everybody says they're gospel-centered. By that, we mean let's keep the main thing the main thing. You can kind of look at the landscape of the SBC, and politics divides us, and politics becomes very passionate. Fundamentalism, there's a legalism in at least some of the churches I grew up in. And so we're saying we want to kind of reject both of those things. It doesn't mean we shouldn't care about politics. It certainly doesn't mean we shouldn't care about holiness, but we do this through the gospel. The second would be, let's return to our Baptist distinctive. So I started really studying when I first got to seminary. Am I really a Baptist? Right. Do I really believe these things? I've grown up in these churches, but do I really believe them? I went to the scriptures. And I kind of started to see, even in just our SBC and Baptist world, sometimes our institutions and our structures were not reflecting our theology. So the primacy of the local church, the autonomy of the local church. And so really kind of saying, hey, let's return to that as well, that we're committed to being actually Baptist. And then the final piece would be committed to the Great Commission together. And so really highlighting international missions, church planting. And so that's why we started Baptist 21. And really now we've kind of morphed into just an informal group that wants to have the right conversations. One of the real negative things right now is we're so divided, and even Christians, for some reason, I feel like, I'm going to talk about this today, we have a panel on race, but I feel like Christians, our rhetoric and even our engagement with one another right now looks almost exactly like the world, except for we cuss a few less times. And it's like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Like, we should be able to disagree as brothers and still move forward. And so one of the things is we want to try to model, how can we have healthy conversation, even healthy disagreement, but still be unified in the most important things. So and the Lord's blessed Baptist 21. And, we have an event every year at the Southern Baptist Convention that has, usually between 1,000 and 1,500 people, mainly pastors and leaders come. And so the Lord's been kind to what we're doing.
Yeah. So let's take one of those discussions, because there's been some confusion. Yeah. So in 2012, the convention made a decision that you could refer to yourself as a Great Commission Baptist. It led to a lot of discussion among our leadership, our staff, our elders have discussed it. More than one time, we've been ready to say, you know what, we need to embrace that. Well, that language is now starting to be used. That's basically the language we've used the last couple of days. Great Commission Baptists. So we were talking earlier that's not just a reaction to the race issue, though we have to own that that is in our past. The SBC started over some race issues, separating from the Northern Baptists. But what's the first line? Being a Southern Baptist.
So there has been some argument about this, and everybody's saying this is reactionary, or some are saying, some that are against it, this is reactionary. And I would just say two things. One, we are no longer a Southern convention. So when we started, and I would even argue this, when we started, 1845, there were no cars, there were horses, there were trains maybe, but there was no, travel was different. So to have a regional convention probably made sense. Now, the reason why it happened, I would not affirm, and obviously it started in wickedness, but having a regional, and even just regional associations made sense because travel was not what it is today. We're no longer Southern. We have had churches in every single state since the 50s. Right. So this is almost 70 years of us not being Southern. So it doesn't reflect who we are. Add to that, when somebody says this is reactionary, no, it's not. The purpose, the Southern Baptist, again, it started for the wrong reasons, but the purpose of the Southern Baptist Convention, the very first line of the Constitution is that we're going to elicit and combine our resources for the propagation of the gospel. So we have always been about this mission. We've always been about the Great Commission. Right. The reason autonomous Baptist churches cooperate is for the Great Commission. Right. And so it more accurately reflects who we are. It doesn't have to be a reactionary thing. It's who we've been at our best, and it's who we desire to be.
Right. And when people react from other places, why would you call yourself Southern Baptist? They'll say, I'm not from the South. Exactly. Why would we call ourselves that? But you're not going to react negatively to say, we're Great Commission Baptists. And we can embrace that. So instead of being negative, nobody likes change. Nobody likes change. But this is a good way to refer to ourselves. And my prayer is that regardless of how things got started, and it is disappointing and hard to even see at times when you read the history. But in spite of that, J.D. Greer was talking about this several years ago in one of his addresses, how we start from that, but then where we've gone and what God's allowed us to do, that's only God's grace. And I pray that we would give ourselves to gospel work going 100%. Forward.
So I know, and in these conversations right now, people just get dismissed out of hand. Even when really important things happen, they say, well, that doesn't mean anything. But last year, at the last SBC we met, and now Great Commission Baptist Convention, but the last one we met, we made a statement that would say that now the founders of the Southern Baptist Convention would no longer be welcome to be in good standing in our convention. That's a huge thing to me. That is the Lord has shown his grace and kindness to bring us from wickedness to something that is redeemable. And is being used by the Lord, and has been used by the Lord to make disciples all over the world. And so, yes, we have to own our past, and some of this is a fact, is a part of that. If we are not deferring in some sense to particularly African Americans who we enslaved and started our convention out of that, I just think we're missing something bad. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we can focus on the thing that should unite us. And the thing that unites us is not being Southern. The thing that unites us is the Great Commission, is the Lord Jesus and the commission he's given to us. And so I think it's something we should be able to rally around. And hopefully the Lord in his kindness, because it doesn't seem like this is possible in 2020, but hopefully the Lord in his kindness will use our mission to then help us to figure out, okay, it's okay to disagree about these things, but still be running towards the same thing.
Right.
And then it's not okay to disagree about these things. We have to divide over these things.
Right.
And I think the Great Commission being out in front of us is going to help us be more unified if we'll actually run after that and stop fighting with each other.
So to be clear, Pillar is not some kind of splinter group. Somebody could ask that, but it is evidence of what you're talking about.
Yep.
That those who do care about the Great Commission, who care about expositional preaching, the Scripture, being kingdom-minded, being Baptist, those things bring us together. And my prayer is going to reverberate out even more.
Right.
Because you're right. There are a lot of churches that care about that and pray for the health and life of the future of the whole convention.
And I think just, again, we're a church planting network, so we're desiring to plant churches together. Well, most of the churches we're planting are not in the South. And so it is,
right.
it sometimes is a hindrance right from the beginning to say we're a Southern Baptist church plant. We are very thankful to be and if you're in the United States, you have to be Southern Baptist, now Great Commission Baptist, to be in our network. We love it. We're thankful for it.
Right.
But when we plant Southern Baptist churches in New York City, that's hard. And so I think Great Commission Baptist will help us and help our planters in Pillar go ahead and avoid one barrier that doesn't even need to exist. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it this way on the flip end, if you lived in the South and somebody started saying, you want to join the Northern Baptist Convention, you'd say, what? Why would I do that? I mean, just think about it on the flip end of that. Yeah. And sometimes we don't think like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm grateful that the conversation has turned into something more positive, and pray that it would continue. I'm grateful for what you have done in Pillar. Baptist 21 was expressed. I'm in that Generation X. I was in that middle group, so I wasn't a part of the group. You know what I'm talking about. And then Baptist 21 forms, and I'm like, all right, these guys are finally saying what some of us in the middle were going, hey. So grateful for that, and grateful for you. Now, you said Akins are really good at two things.
Yeah. Sports and theology.
Sports and theology. So this Saturday, there's a little game going to go on Saturday night.
There's a big game going on, yeah.
Georgia and Alabama. So let's hear what's the prediction.
So as a tortured Georgia fan, my heart says we can definitely compete. Our defense is exceptional. I'm hearing guys who are not Georgia analysts say they think historically good, like best in the last 10 years, probably since 2011, Alabama. So I think we can stay in the game. I'm concerned that our offense can't score enough, and Alabama's offense is really good. So if I was betting money, which I'm not, I would predict Alabama to win, but I definitely think Georgia could win the game. So that's my thoughts.
My daughter's an Alabama student, so.
And I know you're an Alabama fan.
I like SEC football. I will be watching the game.
Definitely, we will be tuned in. I got one of the board members from Pillar to preach for me on Sunday so that I can just stay up and watch the game. So, not the only reason I'm having him preach, but it's a nice consequence.
If you really want to know what the Akins think, follow them on Twitter Saturday night.
Oh yeah.
It'll only take a few minutes.
It would be even more entertaining as if we allowed people to see our text group me during a Cowboys or Georgia football game. It gets pretty interesting. So
that's good. Well, love you, brother. Love your family.
Thanks for your church.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.